Alright, we'll continue with this to finish out the half an hour here. Remember that we are talking about graphing a calculator, and the things that we do are to check the mode, turn this on of course, hit the clear, check the mode, making sure whether we are nowhere in degrees or radians, and whether we're in functions, parametric, polar, or sequencing. Later on you'll see that actually the sequential and the simultaneous is an important one as well. The float, will move that around a fair bit depending on what we want to see, and hit the second quit. If we're in a function mode, we can do things like this. You notice here is the format we're gonna put things. Remember, we remembered mx plus b, so you can, instead of doing, if you were to y equals x, is 1 x plus 0, but that's pretty limiting. So the next thing we're going to learn to do is to do this. We can either put in with the alpha m x plus, we can even use the letters we want, b. Now what will happen when we go to second quit and window, remember we're going to set the minimum and maximums such that the y is 1.5 times the x. So the x minimum is, we're going to put a minus 150. X maximum 150. X scale of 10 typically. Y minimum of minus 100. Y maximum of 100. Scale there, and now we hit graph, we get that kind of bit. Now I'll also point out now a very important thing is to second stat plot and make sure your stat plots are off. So you go to here, enter, and you're going to turn that off. I'm graphing L1 versus L2. We will deal with statistical or data plots later. Second quit, and you graph that and you see what you have there. Again, this is a emulator I'm working on here. Well, now you go to y equals and you see it's not graphing mx plus b because m does not exist and b does not exist. You put values into the variables by doing things like this. Well, maybe you're going to make the slope 5. You store it into alpha m. And perhaps you take 10, you store it into alpha b. So you've put things in variables, and therefore when you graph, you get that second line there. So by putting our forms of our equations in something like this and then feeding into variables, we can make very quick changes. For instance here, second quit, I can now put something like 0.1, store it into alpha m, enter, and now graph it, and you'll see this line running through there. So that general bit of using a standard form, some standard forms, and then changing variables are a very important thing. So in this case, you'll see later you can do all kinds of calculations for tracing them and getting solutions and whatever, but we'll continue on here to do a couple of more. We used b and m, so maybe we'll put alpha a, second quit, second quit, y equals, click, click, and maybe we'll do something like alpha a x squared, second quit, and maybe we'll put 5, store it into alpha a. Now when you graph, you now have something that looks very much like that. That is a parabola up there, but it's so thin you can't see it. If you go back here, and this in civil engineering is one of the more common ones we're going to do, second quit, I'm going to put 0.01 or 0.14 alpha into alpha a. Hit enter here and graph, and you'll see then the parabola looks something a little bit more reasonable. So that is all we're going to do with graphing in the short term. And I will end with that. And wish you well in using the calculator. We're going to see there's going to be a whole lot more when we go into the mode here. In terms of we go ahead and do radians, degrees, and actually in parametric and polar, there's going to be a lot of stuff you can do in this calculator. But remember, the most important thing, second quit, is to check the mode. Second quit. Remember to check the tangent of something you know, which is the angle to the North Star. And then learn to take the sine of 45. Learn to close up your parentheses and know it's the square root of 2 over 2, and the cosine of 45 is the square root of 2 over 2 of 0.71. Thanks for listening, and we'll post this out.